Greetings, fellow humanoid creatures with unrealistic proportions who lack ears and noses. I am your host, Raven Stan for Life 5656, and today I'm making a video that I wanted to make for a long time now. You see, Ringmaster Raven has been my favorite Poptropica villain ever since I first played Monster Carnival back in 2014, and even though that opinion is not shared by that many people, I've yet to meet someone who actually dislikes him. The most I've seen is complaints about his boss fight, which, fair. This video, however, is not about the gameplay of Monster Carnival Island. It's about the second most important thing about an island, its story. I am very well aware of the fact that I am not the first person to say this, and I likely won't be the last, but Monster Carnival's story, and specifically the way Ringmaster Raven is treated by the writers, is, to say the least, really messed up. For those of you who don't know, Ringmaster Raven's backstory is told through old newspapers in the last third of the island, where it's revealed that he was an orphan child who was abandoned by the carnival he was traveling with, and then got banished from the town he was left in due to being framed for arson. 20 years later, he would return to the town he was banished from as the ringmaster of his own carnival, only to have his revenge plot foiled by your own character, who turns him into their slave, forces him to act like a chicken for the rest of his life, and causes him to go through the exact same type of suffering that led him to villainy in the first place. Now, there are about a billion problems that arise when the story is applied to Ringmaster Raven, but since I don't have all day, I'm only going to talk about 3 of them and let you all know that I'm being restrained here. The first problem arises when you consider Ringmaster Raven's design, and no, I don't mean concept or personality, I mean his physical appearance. The first thing of note about Ringmaster Raven's appearance is his abnormally large nose, which, in a world where the regular inhabitants don't even have noses, I can understand being a bit strange for the townspeople. However, the design of Ringmaster Raven's nose is very reminiscent of the Jewish nose stereotype, an anti-Semitic caricature that refers to a prominent, exaggerated nose. During a good chunk of the 19th and 20th centuries, the term Jewish nose was commonly used in scientific literature to describe that specific trait as a race-based deformity. And even these days, there have been a lot of instances in which celebrities or companies came under fire for their racist depictions. Yes, this is a pretty messed up thing to do, but the second thing about Ringmaster Raven's appearance, his avian features, makes me wonder something. It is entirely possible that Ringmaster Raven's design was based off of Tengu, which are supernatural beings from Japanese mythology that are portrayed with human and avian characteristics. Though initial depictions of them had actual beaks, this was later changed to instead be an unnaturally long nose. Now, this theory obviously doesn't justify the gross design choice, it just sort of explains how the disturbing implications might have went over the creators' heads. But the third and most important thing about Ringmaster Raven's appearance is his skin color, which is darker than that of most other characters and the darkest out of all the villains. Okay, I don't think I have to explain to any of you why turning a black man into a slave is a horrible thing to put in a story, especially the story of a children's game, so I'm not gonna go more in depth regarding this specific topic and just leave it at that. The thing that makes Monster Carnival's racism so much more different than the problematic portrayals in some other properties, like say Steven Universe, is the fact that Poptropica doesn't have coded characters. Most of the characters are humans with explicit races, and the characters that aren't humans are simply not any race. A Steven Universe fan that doesn't see the problems with, say, Garnet's appearance or Suglite's mannerisms could potentially be forgiven, as racial coding as character design does tend to fly over some people's heads, especially mine. However, none of that applies for Ringmaster Raven, because Ringmaster Raven isn't just coded black, he is black. The creators went out of their way to make a black man as visually unappealing as they possibly could, which was also partly done by using a racist caricature, then gave him the worst backstory they possibly could, then ended the story with him turning into a chicken slave, and they did not see any issue with that whatsoever. The second problem with the story arises when you consider the townspeople themselves. One interesting idea I've heard about Monster Carnival's story is that the carnival is a monster carnival because the townspeople are the monster. And though that could be potentially interesting, it doesn't actually work due to the fact that this is never acknowledged in universe. The townspeople are not ever portrayed as being even slightly in the wrong, and Ringmaster Raven's punishment is seen as a fully appropriate one. They even went as far to caption the 4th Monster Carnival photo like that. He'll have time to think about his life of crime. Yeah bro, his life of crime, the whole 5 minutes of it. And it only gets worse when you also consider the bonus quest of Monster Carnival, in which it turns out that Dr. Dan, the owner of the apothecary who's been helping you a lot throughout the island, was actually a monster like Ringmaster Raven the whole time, but he hid it from the rest of the world because he feared that he'd be treated the same way as Bird Boy. At the end of the bonus quest, all the townspeople just show up at once to tell Dr. Dan that they won't treat him like that because they love him, and also they don't hate monsters anymore. Now, you may be wondering, okay, so it seems they now understand that they need to treat people nicely. What's the problem with that? The problem is that these people haven't learned anything from the whole Ringmaster Raven fiasco. If you talk to one of the townspeople after Ringmaster Raven's defeat, she'll say that they need to start treating people better so that they don't try to take revenge on the whole town. Not because it's the right thing to do, just because they don't want to deal with something like that again. As if you actually need a reason to not treat people horribly. Also, fun fact about that woman's dialogue, when the island was first released, the actual line was, "We should be nicer to people in the future so they don't try to enslave us." Some people understandably took issue with this line, as the person saying this is also black, and obviously having black people blame themselves for almost being enslaved isn't exactly a nice thing to have in your story for children. At some point during October of 2017, I think, this line was changed to remove the mention of enslaving, yet the second sentence was strangely left untouched. You know, the line that basically confirms the fact that the townspeople haven't learned crap and that they don't actually believe they should treat people nicely because it's the right thing to do. Was that supposed to be some sort of joke? Were we supposed to find it funny that the line about the right thing to do was an afterthought? Because it wasn't funny, it was downright despicable. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Monster Carnival was the direct successor to Poptropica Island, which was a narrative genius of an island back when it was released. Every possible great joke that could have been told was already told. Oh, and also none of those jokes were at the expense of a remorselessly mocked black slave, so, you know, that was also pretty nice. Okay, so this is me from a couple days in the future. Sorry if you can hear the fan in the background, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm dropping in to say something that I wanted to put in the script but forgot to, and I couldn't find a way to make this organically fit, so I'm just gonna say it here. You know how Ringmaster Raven's punishment is him being paraded around in a cage for the amusement of attendees? To me that seemed like really similar to human zoos, which during the colonial era were places where black and native people were showcased as if they were animals, which is just yikes. And I was just sitting here thinking this couldn't possibly get any worse. Anyway, back to the actual video. The third and final problem that I want to talk about goes beyond Monster Carnival and into some characters from other islands. Specifically, some other villains with tragic pasts. Now, Poptropica is no stranger to the concept of tragic villains, or even villain reformations, be it for minor antagonists who worked for or alongside the big bad, or the big bads themselves. There's really only been one instance where the reformation of a big bad really worked for me though, and that was the magistrate from Ghost Story. The rest of them don't feel right or satisfying since it doesn't happen until the big bad has lost all their power, which makes me doubt that their feelings of remorse are genuine. But for this script, I only want to highlight one of these characters, and that character is Scheherazade from Arabian Nights. Scheherazade is introduced as the leader of the 40 Thieves at the start of episode 2 and doesn't turn good until the very end of episode 3. However, from the moment we first see her in episode 2, she routinely demonstrates why she doesn't deserve a second chance. Literally, the first thing we see Scheherazade do is threaten a poor old man and directly cause his death. Then she has our character put in a cell where we meet another poor old man who also dies right before the episode finale. Then she locks us in a room with gunpowder and throws a fire inside in order to kill us. Then she threatens to kill us in the exact same scene where we're first supposed to see her as sympathetic. Then she tries to kill us again with her new genie powers by dropping things on us and destroying our carpet. Then she attempts to literally take our soul. And the only reason we ended up surviving that last one was because the Sultan arrived just in time. Had he been even a second too late, we would have been killed, and Scheherazade would have shown no remorse whatsoever. Much like some other excuses of tragic villains that we've been getting lately, Scheherazade's quote-unquote sympathetic backstory isn't revealed to us until way after she's already crossed the moral event horizon. Unlike Ringmaster Raven, who doesn't do a single evil thing until after you're introduced to his terrible backstory. Yeah, sure, he does turn the carnies into monsters, but at that point in the story, we didn't know for sure that it was him, and also that is basically nothing compared to actual murder. Even worse with Scheherazade's backstory is that it's presented in a way to suggest the Sultan was more at fault for her fall to villainy than Scheherazade herself. At the end, he's talking about how he was so blind to everything around him, but his daughter became the leader of a criminal organization that tormented and slaughtered people. Are you telling me that there wasn't a single other way for her to show her father the error of his ways or whatever? Did she have to go the most extreme way possible? And it's not like this extreme solution is her last resort either, because the extreme solution does not get anything done. The whole issue with the Sultan is fixed by just showing him a drawing. I know Poptropica islands don't need to have amazing or even sensical stories, but come on! Out of every island in Poptropica with promising stories but little content, or interesting ideas that fell completely flat, Monster Carnival Island upsets me the most, simply because of just how close it was to being great. Trust me, if this stuff had happened in an island like Backlot or Nopety, or basically any island that's just a mediocre island I don't care about, I probably wouldn't have spent 10 freaking hours on a video tearing it to shreds. But Monster Carnival is just an almost great in every possible category. It had an almost great story that face-planted into the wet cement of failure at the last possible second. It had an almost great gameplay experience that only fell apart during the final boss. It had an almost great villain that could have been up there alongside Zeus or Binary Bard, and it had an almost great message to deliver to its young and impressionable target audience. Monster Carnival could have had a great everything, making it on par with mythology, cryptids, or possibly even astronites. Too bad the Monster Carnival we ended up getting had none of those things. Once again, I apologize for the very ranty video. I know most people, including myself, would much prefer a comedic and entertaining video over one that talks about such negative topics. If you are that type of person, I'd suggest you go to basically any other video on the Pop Month playlist. Poptropica month is coming to an end, and it was very fun while it lasted. If there's anything I missed or forgot to mention, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.